for illumined life to be birthed into form. I am the truth. I am the light. Illumined, beloved divine.
So hello there everyone, and welcome to another video update with me here today. As I've promised, I will be doing prolonged divine illumined union video discussions. This one will be more specifically focused on the healing journey between the masculine and feminine divine, their current stories in the unfolding, and how they can come together and how they are ultimately coming together in unity, and what is the higher nature and purpose behind these unions from the bigger perspective, and what is the God's divine will, how these unions are actually assisting the divine plan. I will do a further extended Illumined Union reading, as I always did on Patreon, but I've missed one in June due to my moving situation. So in the previous video, I mentioned a little bit about the dark deception and how darkness is playing these games because it does not want to see these unions coming together, and how there's so much distraction, distortion, trickery, manipulation, black magic, dark magic even. A lot of people don't believe in these things, but they do exist, and they're usually coming from the astral planes. They're moved through the individuals that are in the lesser density states, that are more egoic in their self-serving tendencies. So they often come through people, but if people aren't available, you're hijacked directly. So that's how it's happening. I want to mention first my own example, my brief example, because as I've shared with you, it is profoundly important now that the feminine divine, that the feminine who's come into her Christed femininity holds the space for the masculine. I'll explain today why, a little deeper, and why and how the darkness has worked so hard. Like, I can only share from my own example and how Spirit showed me it's happening in the greater Spirit collective. The darkness has been working so hard in these distortions. So, we moved at the end of May, starting in the beginning of June. And it was a long month of physical work, but it wasn't a smooth kind of transition and work for us. There were so many of these distractions and things like, for example, that the previous owner didn't tell us, or we didn't get the right information. So we came here and, the bathroom was totally crappy, not just that the kitchen was totally missing. So we had to redo the whole bathroom, and they had to come. It's still not fully finished because we need to replace the doors too. And these things, they're just old. And, these are things, you decide on your own. But what's happened, since that moment, there were so many distractions, like bombardments coming through, and it was happening all at once. So we would get into this devastated, losing money, more expensive than initially planned. The bank was giving us trouble, as I've shared. We're in the changing bank transition stage now. It's all so arduous because in the midst of all these chaos that's happening physically, I have to hold a space for the beloved every day. And, I'm doing readings, I'm doing these initiatives. I need to do breath cultivation. I started doing my tantric yoga practice again. And it's moving from that stagnant state in which I was before for many months into this highly active state of my life. And I'm still getting used to it, hit by one. So what happened, that week when they were supposed to come and redo our bathroom, which all happened very fast, we ran out of water. We lost the water. We were without water for days because the free water that was initially plugged in here, coming from the hills, they had this mini pool, but no one was maintaining it anymore. So we didn't get that information initially because the previous owner said, oh, no problem, you can get plugged into the new water, whatever you can, The plugging was paid for, the contribution, but you can plug in anytime you want. Yeah, right. That happens is the pipers, because they were doing forestry. So all of a sudden this chaos started happening. We're without water. The workers were supposed to come. How do you do that without water? And there was so much distraction, and we're getting so stressed and bombarded that after this was finished and the water came back, but not the water they plugged us in, the previous water, and in the meantime they came and plugged us into the new water, but we don't have yet the you have to dig under the ground. There's these specifications that you need to fulfill, and it's a very expensive process because first you need to pay them for the plugging, the government, and then the workers need to come and dig this hole foundation through which the pipes, into which the pipes go. And we didn't know that's such an expensive thing. So these worker comes that, they recommended, and he gives us this number, like he said, like 2,000 euros. We're like, what the heck? No, we were panicking, And then we had to call other people. Hey, do you know someone who could dig this and that? And it's quite a long road extension, like let's say 20 meters or so. And it was so much happening all at once. So those of you who thought that we just bought a house in the hills and it's all fine and perfect, no, my dears, it's a very difficult, arduous process, because through these things and these mishaps, I'm feeling how the darkness is working so hard to get me off my peaceful, centered state. But I'm managing now. I'm seeing I'm flowing through these obstacles much more than previously. I'm getting more self-maintained because I actually started doing the tantric cultivation practice, because I've noticed even if I just do a little bit of that, it changes my level of life force sustenance so fast and so rapidly. So I don't get so plugged into, I need to do this now, I'm out on a whim, and if I don't do it, my life will fall apart, to bits and pieces, and I need to run away from this planet because it's so freaking difficult, which was my first initial response before I was starting to anchor myself back in this mode. And it's like constant day-to-day battlefield for us, like do this, do that, and it's so many things that go wrong, that institutions forget, and these, paperwork, and like all these stuff. And it was just so much. It's all started piling up, and we're like, what the heck? Can there be more? Can there be more? And let's say you say to a worker, let's get this, and then it's not available. And then the communication is not coming through. The workers are not notifying you and when they could come and this and that. And it was so much. So we actually took a week off because everyone was going on a break, and we said, we're going to take that week off too. So during that week, I had so many epiphanies and realizations. So my family of light, yesterday we did this reading, showed me that we're actually coming out of the cycle of deception. And they were kind of congratulating me because the feminine, in this case me, the feminine Christ divine, holding her beautiful lotus power, she went through the most impeccable, well-schemed, plotted manipulation, distortion possible. I was spinning in this loop for a wheel now. I couldn't see through. I was in this looping question. What is the truth? This or that? This or that? And I couldn't break through. So I was moving from one story to the next and one to the next. And this all relates to the masculine and how I relate to the masculine and what is the purpose and meaning of this masculine energy and presence physically in my own life. So it was all very complex, right? As I've notified you, I did this automatic channel writing in which a higher perception was shown to me. I'm going to do an extended update too, and this will be all in the Illumined Union update for the month of July, which will be June and July together. So all these epiphanies and realizations I went into and through in spite of all my challenges and obstacles. And I don't want to brag, but thumbs up for me. I have to congratulate myself because it was no piece of cake. So what my beautiful team of light showed me is they said the feminine now walk through the door. We're coming out of this, and the feminine is guiding the way. The feminine principle of life is the guiding principle in our cycle right now, because we have major cycles completing now. It's not just this year that I'm mentioning in these videos of mine, but it's, let's say, a whole decade of things coming together and beyond. There's like these huge cycles being completed now, but there's masculines who are still at the verge of accepting this path and their true mission of the soul, and that they are in the path of divine union too. And these masculines who are in this union path have been misled, manipulated, and told falsehood about themselves and the divine feminine, or who we call their counterpart too. So the spirit has told me that now it's the masculine's role to see through these illusions, and they have to make the right choices too. So from my own perspective, I can tell you I've chosen. I know exactly what I feel, how I feel, and what I want and what I need, because spirit has also shown me a bigger reason and perspective why the feminine physically needs the masculine, and I'll share more about this later. And so, it's almost like when the feminine is in that illusory state, she believes about herself that she has this power over the masculine, that if she feeds him the right information, that if she tells him how she feels and what she would feel, and that her choice would somehow be able to influence his because of the intensity of this true love she feels for him, for the masculine. But the challenge here is that this is not the truth. And my Illumined family has recently told me, they said, no, the only reason for masculine making this huge leap of faith and this change does not only come from feminine sacrifice. Yes, she is the ultimate sacrifice, right? I'll share in the extended update on Patreon what the sacrifice of the feminine is, more in depth and detail, and also show you some cards, as I always do. And it's more so than the sacrifice of the feminine just holds the space. She does not have to sacrifice herself thinking like, if I'm not going to do this and if my love is not enough, then I failed. That's falsehood. So the masculine himself, he as this own guiding force that's not actually following the feminine, but is catching up with being that together, leading the way in equanimity and equality, because the feminine never wants to be worshipped and put on the pedestal and, you know, like kiss your feet, do this and that. You know, many masculines believe that this is what the goddess means. No, the goddess wants to be an empress, which is the physical equal. It stems off the perception of what is the true Christ born on the planet, the planetary Christ, right? The embodied Christ. And feminine and masculine can both hold that space together. It doesn't matter who was in front of who, because that's all the process that divine had in mind. This divine intelligence knows how things are playing out. So there's no room for ego battles here, like who was first, who initiated what, who was more correct, you know, who went through initiations first. This is not an ego game. Divine union is an intelligently schemed, plotted process, but from the team of light. And the way it comes together in this space of earthly incarnation, because we're bringing that to the matter. We're bringing spirit to matter through these unions and no other way. That's what this is, the last stage of the journey, as they've shown me. This is the last step, the last resort, because during this play out, both the masculine and the feminine polarities and their physical incarnations, what they had to learn through this lifetime, they had to go through their own process of learning and gaining wisdom, sometimes through suffering, sometimes to making mistakes, sometimes to being having allegiances and loyalties to people who are karmic and false. Even a lot of people still have false people in their life. You know, these are people who seem to be backing you up, but they're not really telling you just do what your heart feels. Do what your heart feels, because your heart is love. And you, in the middle space of your soul, at the core of the soul, you know your answers. These are people who would tell you things from their own assumptions, their own stories, their own life experiences. And most of these people are karmic, which means they're not people on the ascension path. And the feminine had to see through. Now the masculine also has to see through. Okay, these belief systems playing out this way through people. So during this time of their separateness, which means we each had to gather who we were. And for me, I had to be alone to do this, because for me, the only reason to get to the level of wisdom and understanding through illumination that I could come into truly was to be alone. Because everyone who's not really aligned with me at the core soul level would somehow be burden and a distraction. So for me, that was the ultimate choice, to go at it alone, to pave the way, to do all this mission work, to create all this content for people who'd be following and all this. This was my path. But in no way this means I am beyond anyone, or I'm in front of the masculine, or, you know, any kind of way. There's no competition here. But because of these ego, lack of self-worth and, you know, having low self-esteem, there's still a little bit of that left, especially in the masculine. So we're not blaming anyone here, because it's always, you know, mirrored. So when the feminine would have this true love for the masculine, but there would still be a little distortion, like some people call that loving someone through fear that is unrecognized and unacknowledged. Let's say the feminine has, like in my case, I had a fear that that love coming towards me, it's not true. It's not genuine. It's false love based on admiration and worship and how to say that, infatuation, that's not love. That was my fear. And perhaps the masculine fear was not deserving that love, because put it so highly up in the pedestal. It's not real. It's too real. It must be an illusion. So usually in most cases, the masculines would find a self-sabotaging something, at least one reason, one excuse, something that would make them say, oh yeah, I knew this was too good to be true, and to pull away. And that's how the darkness works as well, through these self-born deception points, insecurities that then they just feed off of. And they're getting off of that, truly, these beings who are not wanting these unions to come together. So during that road traveled, right, now the feminine needs to hold space of this pure love and compassion, which means loving really not just in words, but we as feminines in the Christ, if we're truly Christ-born feminine, we need to have this total and complete love for the masculine, even if they choose the path of the dark, even if they choose to still make mistakes, even if they still choose to go down the karmic road. It's saying, okay, I allow you. I completely let you go, in the sense of you know what's best. And that, you know, if you feel true love is your path and journey, you will come back. You'll come back home, as many call it. And this is that homecoming that's in spirit first, coming home to your own spirit flame, your own devotion, your own internal God connection, which can be so instant once you drop these patterns and self-sabotage. It's so beautifully, right, unfolding in a fast, rapid, accelerated state if you're just allowing yourself to do so. So the feminine, her true love, her true wisdom of the feminine is total and complete allowance. That doesn't mean putting up with the BS that's still coming perhaps from the masculine side, because that means you're supporting it. But it's complete detachment, detanglement from the web of these lies and falsehoods. In my case, I had to do this, so I had to see through my own inception. Because for 1 year, the darkness was trying to lure me away from that as if that's wrong for me. So it was showing me that the cause of my pain and suffering and this addictive energy and vampiric energy was the masculine itself. But no, it was the darkness coming through the masculine. It was the darkness being channeled through the masculine because of his own illusions, right? And these misconceptions about love, deceptions about their own life, where they are, what's good for them, you know, what's truly the path of true love. And because the darkness works so hard and so super diligently on this, it can convince people into something super fast. So unless you develop this inner quality of seership, which is a course I did, let's say 2 years ago or so, it's under my Divine Trinity courses for Illumined Union training. And it's a mastery of seership, right? Illumined cognition. I've talked about this and how we need to see and develop this internally. We can only do that with cultivation practices, like I was doing for years. And it's not like because I wasn't doing it or unable to do it for a year, it just disappeared. The moment I started doing it, it was like the gift was back. It was not like it was away. It's just like I had to reinstigate it in the moment, which was very beautiful. So I was shown now that the feminine's gift is to be in this non-defensive state. I talked about this before, to continuously hold the frequency of longing. I'll talk about longing in the next video and the importance of it, because this is a huge challenge that actually came through. I recorded it a while ago, a few days back, but I didn't share it yet because it didn't feel aligned, because I already did other videos too. So it will come after this one actually. And it's such an important challenge you don't want to miss, because it discusses a bigger topic of why these unions are so important and how we're moving to this fifth frequency density embodiment, or what people call the fifth dimension, but it's really fifth density, right? Not dimension. So the masculine's role is now to, from the feminine stream of this life force offered support through her love that now is truly blossoming into becoming unconditional. We knew before, I always knew what unconditional love is, but for me, because of my high council connection and my high diligence work with spirit, it was sometimes, to be honest, too overly spiritualized. So my love was so idyllic that I couldn't drop it on earth. I couldn't relate it to someone being physically that beloved for me, right? So this idea, as I've shared with you, this beloved that I was envisioning, that was truly a being for so many years for me, in a way it had to die, right? This idea had to die because it had to be birthed at the 3D density level. I'll explain more about that on Patreon, why it has to be physical, but in a nutshell, the way Spirit and my light team explained it to me is that the unions that are more powerful, the most powerful unions, are not between people who are, let's say, very, very similar, but between people who are very different in terms of their embodiment, because there's a wider array of the spectrum that when they come into their closeness, their vulnerable closeness, intimacy and connection that's shared between them both, and this great depth of intimate connection, which is tantric, right? They can both originally connect to their own tantric pool of light, and then they can share it together, because through that streaming I was shown they're going to start channeling things that are beyond, that each individual cannot do on their own. But in this togetherness, they would just start getting insights, like pulling them one by one. Because one reason they showed it, especially for me, because I'm a light being, they said I need a very physically anchored being, like physical man, in a way that would anchor me more back into my body. Because, you know, through these transgression experiments of these fallen electrocutions, right, I was kind of upsurged to upward. And, you know, everything in my body started changing in a downward spiral kind of way, right? So they were showing me this anchoring that only the masculine can provide through the physical contact and union, right, which is tantric, this Heros Gamos connection that I always talk about, which is a super beautiful thing that if you can manage to experience that on earth in utter purity, you know, in the tantric connection is when all ego, attachment, debris, past, insecurities, past partners, all that, timelines, lifetimes even, are put aside. It's just you and the other person channeling, being in the presence of source and channeling this divine intelligence through their bodies. That's truly tantric union. It's not what people would say, oh, it's just a higher version of sexuality. No, it's like a whole separate world. It's like a totally different purpose to it. And it's beautiful. And I can tell you from higher realms experience, but to have that experience on earth, right, is challenging. So for me, why this journey was even more challenging is because I came from a very, very high perspective of light intelligence and then embodiment. And someone years back, they even said to me, they had the description that I'm like half ethereal. In a way that was true, and the way I experienced life, and always feeling like never above others, but just so different in frequency, was hard for me to really plug in with people. So even with physical men, I always felt like I'm triggering them in experiences that for them were negative. Like they would have body symptoms even with me sometimes because my energy was so intense. And with the transgression, that amplified, and my own body was getting symptoms because of that, right? So now when that was liberated and I'm in this releasing stage and I'm at these final stages of that being completed, they were showing me that at the end of that journey is a preparation for the masculine who can stand and be that pillar, that lightning rod, right? Which is what the masculine energy in itself represents. And the feminine is the womb and the spiraling of that energy that, you know, then starts spiraling through both of them when they can conjure up their energies together in the union. But there can be no deception. So now I saw what really broke through because I finally got my final answer. It never felt final before. I thought one day, yes, it's final. And then the next day was again a no. And it was shifting, moving from yes, no. Oh, God, goodness gracious. You know, I had to have so much patience for myself because Source always said it's a process, right? And this divine intelligence will eventually win over. So in this previous video, we talked about the triumph of love because of that. And love was triumphant from the feminine perspective. And many of you who are feminines in these unions are feeling that shift. You're feeling, now I know. And I know what I'm holding space for. So the moment your love becomes Christed, you're no longer holding the space just for yourself, your own body, or your counterpart. But you're holding it for the collective. That's the beautiful thing. So I was shown that the collective of masculines are now experiencing this difficulty. Like I was even shown today in cards, like 3 times in a row, rock bottom, like this heavy energy. And they're just needing the upsurge of our love, affection, that somehow they're feeling craving for, or the loss of, or the distance of, because of their own past actions that were distorted. But somehow they need to find their own way back. But we need to, as always, the feminine, just hold this gentle rose, divine feminine essence that's just overflowing with love. And this is how I was feeling for this past week, just so soft, so full of love, you know, like people say lovey-dovey. And I have to show you something because I bought something for myself. It's not the things I usually buy, but my inner child wanted it somehow. So I bought these pins and I'm going to add them to my charms. Yeah, I do have a mini charm collection because it's something I like to do as a collector. So it's not just cards I'm collecting, right? It's kind of a, you know, over the top. So I got this lover boy and lover girl pins. They found me. I'm not going to say I found them, but they're so cute. Like, sorry for my nails because I'm working now. I'm a worker farmer here. Not a farmer, but I do work with the dirt, with the earth now. So this is a lover boy one. And then we have the lover girl one. And I hope my iPad can zoom in correctly. And the third one is hopeless romantic. This is just my favorite. So then I found another page, and this felt like the empowered feminine. This felt like Aurea to me. I had to buy these two. They were quite expensive for charms. I mean, I don't pay that much for things that are just tiny, but you know, this felt like it has a meaning for me. So with all this darkness and this hijacking, I was shown this, and it says, "Still I rise." And it's from these poets. These are quotes. And it felt like the sun is eternal. And it's like the circle of the always and ever-present returning feminine. Whatever is done to the feminine, because she is life itself, always finds a way to regrow back. You know, now I'm doing so much weeding, like pulling the weeds out. Weeding. That sounds weird, yeah. You don't want to hear the history of this house, though, you know, who lived here and what they've done. You know, we found out. So I don't want to tell you more because then you think I'm weird, but it's not my fault. You know, it's who lived here before. I'm just cleansing it all out of the space. But this second one reminded me of Aurea, because she is the speaker. She's divine Elohim presence, conjuring up these higher power words. And I always see her as the chaser of darkness. Like, she chases the darkness away, like literally so, when she moves through me. And that's rare when she really literally comes through. And I had to do pulse her usually for her to do so. It's not so easy. It's not automatic, because everything on earth, as we know, requires work and diligent devotion. So it says, although they are only breath, words which I command are immortal. And this is just so powerful. So these tiny little things are very meaningful for me now. I should do that. I put her on, like each on one side, right? Still I rise, because I speak my divine words. Yeah. So anyway, that's that. I want to explain more how this compassion feels. Everything that we say that we know in truth is not really embodied until we literally feel it. We have to feel it as a frequency. And this is why I explained that it's not enough for the feminine to love the masculine, and the love is always present. She's like the spiral always winding around him, his essence. It's like her essence twirling around, and he's that lightning rod that's always there, keeps on returning even when they're not. It's always a mutual dance, because, you know, when you choose each other, it's just, everything is a matter of choice. At the soul level, we have these agreements, as you know. Nothing is, when people say we're bound together, you know, bondage and commitment are two different things. In our language, the word for commitment is basically false, because it means like you're being bondaged. But it's love is supposed to be based on a bond, a soul bond, not bondage. So in English, there's a better terminology to use the word commitment. In our language, it's like, you know, stuck together, like it's karmic, it's tied. It's not supposed to be based on these ties, but on bonds, right? Bonds are soul level. This means there's a spiritual union, there's a spiritual love conjured up through this union. And this spiritual love, because it's real, and the only reason why it's real is because it's spiritual at its core, it keeps on fluctuating through that spiral, and it keeps on returning. And each cycle that it returns back to, first through the feminine, then through her love to the masculine, and he would feel her next level of rising, right? Still I rise. It should say always, still, but always I rise. Always higher. I should make my own pin, though. I should pioneer pins. I do have a logo, though. Does someone know how to make pins? We should, you know, do a new business here. Anyway, guys, it's just very, very important that we understand this process, and it is a process. It truly is. And we cannot force it to be a certain way. All realizations have to come from within, but realization is the first step. It's when you come into the next level of truth, which is becoming more and more unified, right? Your personal truth with the truth of God, with divine plan, with your divine path, your divine mission of the soul, not your daily deeds on earth that feel very random and repetitive. But this is a higher calling, and this is a part of this Illumined Union, is a higher calling. And when these unions, when these beings come together, it's not going to be mine versus yours anymore. It's going to be a new conjured up something, like a new melting pot of what was before and what can be now. Feminine, masculine, my life before, your life before. It's like the union, the life of union, something totally different. There's a triangulation again. Don't forget, a union is a triangulation. It's not like separate but together. It's not this put like this. It's this put like this. Remember that. Always like this. Simple terminology of source, one-on-one learning basic stuff that I was teaching in my first few mastery courses. That's so basic to me now, but it is important to those people who are just firstly walking through this and having their first epiphanies. A lot of people are now finding these terms like twin flame, and for me, I've explained to you before, it has a different meaning than what most people describe it to be. I don't see it as one soul torn into two pieces. No. I see it like an establishment of basically very contrasting energies that have work to do on earth, and because they're so contrasting, they have such an infinite pull. And that's why Spirit explained the unions that now already are on earth, we're going with the easier ones first, Spirit said, because you need more easier ones to hold the space. The more complex ones always finish last. So if you're one of those, never for me, is because, you know, the intense ones, we finish last. It's not time related, it's a process related. It's again, right, that what lies on top, and the top only comes together, right, when the base is solid and the foundational principles have been met there at that level. So what that means is that they had to be enough quotient for these higher advancements to take place. And when the feminine Christ was able to pull through and have her realizations first, how the darkness plays, how she was being played, what's the truth, and seeing her patterns here because of that, then she can come into that truth, accept it, forgive herself, forgive the journey, and forgive the masculine. But that doesn't mean, oh, whatever you've done, masculine, in this process, it's fine because it's all the dark. No. Even if it's the darkness, everyone has to have that true integrity within our beingness, that we say, well, I fell for it. Well, I participated. I did this and that. My actions did not come from love. My actions did not come from respect, deep appreciation, and affiliation with source. They came from other source, right? Which is separation. That's why I don't like to call ego. I call it separation because it's something that has less judgment sound to, right? And so now with this new level of openness, I'm feeling like I can just be in the state of love. And it's almost like even if I get a negative message or response energetically from the masculine, or, what the darkness is still trying to bombard, I'm like, yeah, whatever, I'm getting more neutral about it. And then instantly I can turn back into love. It's not, the energy is not as defensive and deflective anymore, but it still requires work. It's not like instant and yeah, I got it now. It's being really watchful for saying, we can never say, oh, I've arrived. That's egoic, because the moment we think we did, we're vulnerable again. We're susceptible to the dark. We have to always be in this notion of spiraling. We're always spiraling, not looping, but we're always spiraling. And because we're always spiraling, hey, it's going to be the next challenge and the next. But people who are afraid of that, they've lived the status quo. They've lived suppressed under the lid cover. They haven't allowed themselves to open up to the true feelings and pouring out their soul because it felt easier somehow. So they've taken the easy road out. But those people who've done that, or those counterparts even, they will have a more rougher or harder time right now, because there will be a period of the way this period of grace is acting out in an earthly sense. Because remember, the moment the feminine wakes up, she, with her raging power of that wake-up call, seeing what the darkness has done, then that which was the tower that the darkness created has to fall. And in that falling, the masculine would also feel that fall. And the brick wall starts to collapse. And what they believed about their lives to be an illusion, because the feminine, she is the foundation, right? She is the body. She woke up at the base level. That base is changing. So the whole tower has to adjust and adapt, which means all the falsehood has to fall. So I've been getting collective messages from many readers, because there's people, I will tell you, who read energies, and they're very talented in that way. They are somehow guided by higher forces and presences, and there are people who are making up stories. So if you're watching readings and someone starts giving a very detailed explanation of the happenings and something, that's a story. Because that story is meant to manipulate you, thinking, oh, what if that's the truth? It brings an association into your mind, which becomes another level of hooking into it. It becomes a contraption, an entrapment, right? And that's how it lures you into another game. A story is starting to unfold. A reader who is genuine, who's authentic, will just read the energies in a very neutral way. And I've came across a few, and everyone was channeling the same collective energy. Sorry, these are my lights. Ooh. They're very bright in the evening time when I watch the stars from my balcony. Yeah, peace. So anyway, it's very important right now that we understand the process more than we do our story. Get out of the story. Even if it's your own situation, think of it as it's happening for the highest good. But how am I choosing to walk the path of light here? How am I choosing union? How am I not choosing union? Hey, we have to really see, where am I still distracting myself? Where am I feeling like a victim? Well, you're a victim usually because you haven't done anything about your situations. You were waiting indefinitely for something to change on the outside. And once it does, it's a tower. Because once it collapses, because you've been building that foundation for so long, it became a whole house. That's why it's harder to collapse, right? And because it's hard to collapse, it's more painful to experience in this process. But it doesn't have to be that painful. The moment you remember that every ending No matter how difficult, because a lot of masculines are being backstabbed and betrayed and cheated, all these things, right? Lied to. There's a lot of deception through which the darkness worked in their life, as I already explained. But when this is collapsing, it's causing pain. But that pain was already there. It's not related with the event on its own, like, oh, this happened. You know, somehow deep down, everyone always knows. Even the masculines knew. The difference is they didn't do anything about it. Right? That's the only thing we always deep down remember, we know, but we choose to not do anything about it because it's safe. And we're playing it safe. I never played it safe. That's why my life was dangerous and difficult, but that's what I've chosen. But some people are they where they are, and I respect that. I understand. It's not easy. And from the feminine, motherly perspective, because the ultimate love of the feminine for the masculine is the Empress. It's physical as well as spiritual. It's spiritual, but it's physical. It's both. It's not, well, I love you just spiritually. Without the physical aspect, that love cannot anchor. I love you just physically without spiritual, that's karmic, you know. Meaning of both is divine illumined union. Two beings joining their inner beautiful beloved children of light with their Christed counterparts. Becoming what people call the power couple. You know, that's just another terminology, but I'll go with it today. It's a good day. We've been having a storm. And it's been now cleared up. As you see, the moment I started recording the video, hey, bright skies. But what's been happening in all of our coffee cups recently, we've had these couples kissing, coming together. And one image was very profound. It was very prolific because it was almost like a tiny clock. And both beings were coming from both sides, the masculine and the feminine. They were almost ready to touch with a clock. So there was a lot of that divine timing sense behind it. Like, it's so close, but there's still divine timing behind it. So the way things are playing out, just remember, don't see things as events. Your emotions, even when they resurface, when things collapse, they come to an abrupt ending or something. A cycle is ready to complete itself. When the pain comes out, don't relate it with the other person, with what has happened, with the lies, deceit, all of that. The pain is a culmination of everything that every time you said, hey, no, not choosing to see, you've been putting that away, and you've had this pile storage house, this whole storage house there. Now I'm ready to erupt a whole bunch of feelings, a Pandora's box open, that now the masculine has to see. It was the same for me when I discovered transgression. 10 years of that backstabbing I had to witness, and I had to say, oh, heck, no. And it was so painful. But I had to start with that first step. I had to start healing myself. And it's not as bad as I see it for most who are earthly manipulated, for the masculines. I went through the ringer. I went through the worst. And I'm not saying, oh, because of that, I experienced more trauma. That makes me, I can act like this and this in my life. Or, the union I'm desiring. No. Every one of us, if we truly want to be the Empress and the Emperor, we have to be equals. There's this beautiful movie I think everyone should watch. It's called Equals. No coincidence. It's a movie that could be so easily related to our lifetime, to this timeline where Earth forces that be want to control, are trying to move this timeline. And we're moving our own timeline. We're shifting the timeline of union. That's what these unions are, as I've said, so important. This movie is just amazing, and the way the actors act out and the chemistry, and they're showing this importance. And this guy, a character, he says somewhere in the middle of the movie, he said, they teach us that all this and how it's important, and we need to explore space. He said, but what we're actually here for, it's right in front of us. And he's speaking about this love and emotion and feelings. That when you're in love, when you're holding a space of love, or being in loveness, in togetherness and unity, especially in the counterpart formation, it's the best you can experience, and that's what he shares. So everyone watch the movie, Equals. Best movie ever. So that's that. And let me just tell you that what I felt recently, it kind of broke my heart a bit, because I was just asking, like, telepathically and in my heart, the masculine, and I was seeing this vision, like, I was getting this confirmed that their whole life, the masculine, what they actually experienced was not the Empress. But if you had a card flipped over, the reversed Empress is everything but. It's not true love. It's not spirit to matter. It's not unconditional. It's not fruitful. It's not nourishing for the soul. It does not cultivate growth and constant birth. It is not life-giving. Therefore, cannot cultivate and produce anything but stagnation and repetition. That's mostly what masculine has been experiencing in this lifetime. And because of that, it was hard to make a shift, because they thought, well, this is it. And then the darkness conceives this idea that, this conception then birthed through us, that this is all that we are supposed to experience, because that's earth. And on earth, you grow karmically and you have to suffer and experience pain. And that's not the truth. And then all these enlightened masters and teachers come and they teach this vertical spirit path. Again, distorting the truth, which is life. God is life. God is the very essence of life. It is that simple. My mother just recently told me, because she started reading another Sri Aurobindo's book, because we got it in this old bookstore, antique bookshop, yeah. And she was reading it and she said, when you read this book, it's almost like you feel you're so far away from God. And I asked her, is that the truth? Is that how the book makes you feel? Is then the book really divine if it makes you feel like you're so far away from God? I said, a lot of these beings, yes, they had beautiful epiphanies. They were amazing beings. Their path was amazing. But that was just the one side of source experience, and everyone has their own connection to source. Like for me, it is so simple to be connected. All I need is to be so with nature, in love. Nature is life. Nature shows us that everything constantly replenishes, rejuvenates, rebirths itself. It's pure. Nature is absolute pureness. Even when you do something to a tree and you cut it off, a new branch will grow. It doesn't say, screw you, owner, you sabotage me, you cut me off. Now I'm going to fall, the other tree will fall on your house. Nature's not vengeful. Sometimes we see it, but we create a lot of these misfortunes and catastrophes that we say they're natural disasters through our own acts and deeds. And most deeds are, as dark. What darkness is doing with this destruction of our environment, with our spaces, our living sacred spaces. We get what we want. It's a result of our own action. And then we say it's God's wrath. No, it's the result of the actions of the human and the human ego, human separation, and human energy investment and creation. Look how other beings, more advanced beings and civilizations live. Harmony, harmony, harmony. And most of these beings you will see coming, they're going to be in these unions. Remember the Pleiadian thing that I explained to you? They have these, it's a mystery tantric school of life. The Pleiadian wisdom teachings called the Electra. And this mystery school teachings is based on these tantric unions, what these unions through coupledom do and how they affect the whole. And it's profound. Just like starting to enter that. And you can imagine these earthly couples now starting to come together on earth, entering these tantric unions, having these epiphanies and shifts, and starting to conjure up these energies in their own bodies. Yes, that's what means heaven on earth. That is paradise. That is the fifth density. But you have to open your heart first, because the fifth density is the realm of the heart and heart manifestation through the root. So all these three main portals that I talk about from the light being perspective, the crown, the heart, and the root need to be overflowing. So when the love of the feminine is truly unconditional, not just with her words, but the actions are still defensive, because the feminine suffered a lot. I know I have. And because of that suffering, there was a lot of defensiveness and, fear of, I'm just going to be run over again and run down, and I'm always the other woman, and I'm always in the background. I'm always just worship, but nothing real, nothing substantial. That was my experience. It wasn't just a pattern, but it was experience so far. And the darkness played on this experience, saying, yeah, it's always going to be like this, because that's who you are. That's how the darkness works. It gives you these thoughts and impressions. And for the masculine, these thoughts are, yeah, well, that's all you get. That's all you can get. That's all you deserve. Everyone who recognizes, wow, they see their true self. Sometimes there's going to be experience will be somewhere in the middle of a forest or somewhere in nature. For some people, it's in the middle of the street in the city. I don't know. It depends. For me, it's always nature. It's how I play. But they can just be walking, and one day, your essence catches up with you. And you're like, wow, that's me. Wow. I've had many, many experiences like that. I know other people are having them too. That is you meeting yourself. And the moment you do, you know yourself. You know your worth. You know who you are. You know your love. You know you're in the path of Illumined Union too. But it is, again, as always, a choice. So when the feminine truly loves the masculine, even though she knows in a way, she has to recognize the fact that she needs the masculine. Not just etherically, telepathically, and energetically, but physically as well. Because it gives it provision to anchor energy. Like Spirit said, these greater unions that are more harder to achieve are earthly and light being. These unions are like super vast because there's like two beings of great contrast coming together. And when they come and join into union, it's like there's a lot of fear behind these unions because of the greatness that they can bring to this realm, to first to their own worlds, to each other, but also to the world at large. And they're quite complex because of that. But there's simplicity born of that union, which means going back to the basics. So these unions have to be explored from within. And you have to meet yourself first, because the voice of the self will tell you, that's me, that's my journey. I know it, I just know, and my heart has been telling me all along. And the darkness has just been the trickster, the giant trickster that all my life had never left me alone. And I never felt like the lucky one, you know, like born under my true star, pursuing my true north star, my true north. And my beloved as that star. So yeah, it's intense. That's what I was feeling. I will do a deeper channeled writing, and I'll do Patreon Illumined Union update this month, because I'm not working as much because we still have work to do here in the house. In the house. I'm just in a good mood today. I don't know, I'm in a good mood the whole week. I don't know. Many things are still crappy here, but I'm choosing to be in the good mood because of this what I'm feeling. Because the moment when the feminine is in this love space, she's just exuding it out, and it will be felt by the masculine, not just one, but plural masculines. All the masculines of the world will hear and feel my spiral. And it's just as it is. And so I felt also the message of the mother coming through the feminine, because her real love, the ultimate love for the masculine, is from the mother, from the mother's heart. Not mother as mothering, no. Not like babying, no. But the mother, the empress, true love, born on earth empress. In that love, there has to be that Isis to Osiris, when she healed his, you know what, right? When they were broken to pieces and brought it back together. That's an analogy, truly. It's a story how the feminine, when she's in her true power, when she knows herself as the Christ, she can conjure up the wounded and distorted, fragmented, scattered pieces of the masculine, and have that full resurrected masculine come back to life. She revitalizes. She makes masculine come back to life as well, just like she remembers herself as being life. So each divine feminine knows herself, not just I'm the feminine, I'm the goddess. No, you know yourself as the essence of life. When you know yourself as life, life is everything. Life is God, right? Life is divinity. You can conjure up your magic. Your magic moves through you. It's not related to, you know, there's women who keep men because they do dark magic on them. They do these tricks. They learn them at these spiritual workshops that are basically making a whole lot of money on people who are naive. And then people become plugged into this powerhouse of information. You know what darkness is doing, right? They have all this occult, deep, illumined actual information, but they twist it and distort it and feed the little tiny humans as they see them. It's not how Illumined family sees them, but they see them like that. And they feed them crap. They feed them New Age teachings. They feed them distorted truths. They feed them the secret, all these things that are full of baloney. You know, my life family, when I ask them sometimes and something's false, they would use the word baloney and say, baloney. I'm like, okay. And I'm vegan, but that's the word sometimes they use. They just say that's they should say it in a British way. That's really a rubbish. But they say baloney. Anyway, guys, we have to really wake up to what's happening. And the moment you do, it's like you wake up to your magic. You don't see things as fated anymore. You're like, no, it's conjured. Destiny's being conjured up as I go. I'm the one that is making this happen. Because, you know, even most of our questions now are based on, will this happen? Will this person love me? Do they love me? Will they choose me? No, it's like, I see this for myself. And don't become attached to something or someone specifically, even though you might feel that's it. That's my counterpart. But don't get attached to anything or anyone, even if it is the counterpart. Because then your love becomes clingy, you know? And so someone in my life said, well, I don't know what you want because I proposed this and that and you were laughing. And I'm like, well, the reason why I laugh, because I didn't feel it's genuine. It didn't come from that knowing what that true commitment is. And that's why I laugh. It didn't feel it's matured yet. And people would always take this as laughing at you. People take things personally. I don't take things personally. I see everything as a part of the process. If at a certain point it's not aligning because there's still maturation happening behind the scenes. But you have to know what you're aiming for, what's guiding your heart. And if something that's it for you, then you have to choose it. And the moment you choose it, You're going to have to make that at least first step towards it. And the true feminine, she is patient, but she's also not like, yeah, you have forever, I'm just going to chill here. No, she's also like, yeah, I'm patient, but it's not like it's an indefinite time. I'm just going to stay here and you're taking me for granted. No, it's not that kind of energy. It's respectfully making moves, constant spiraling, making moves. Like when you're doing a garden, you don't just wash it over with water one day and then a whole week nothing. You have to gradually cultivate it, right? Weeding the garden, fertilizing, watering, every day, little bit. I couldn't work around a house every day, I must admit, because we have to do other things too, but I would love to, like little, instead of things piling up and then becomes overwhelming. And that's what people say, I feel pressured. Well, of course, because you build that pressure yourself. Like, people would often feel that the pressure comes from the other, but it's self-born. Every feeling you feel, it's in you. But maybe someone's energy spikes that off for you and it triggers you and you think it's them. I never want to push and pressure anyone. That's why sometimes maybe people feel me, my detachment, they take it as I don't love them. It's not true. When I love deeply, like profoundly, you would know, because you would feel my essence. But I would still remain detached because I don't believe love is attachment. I don't love that way. I don't suck myself into someone. I don't need to use the feminine. That's the disgraceful, distorted feminine. She's a temptress. She's a mistress. She's the other woman. She thinks she needs to do magic and Wiccan, whatever kind of tricks to get a man, to keep a man. I was watching some readings and some people were explaining some scenarios. I'm like, what the things that people do to get their desired outcome. Wow. Imagine the level of karma you create with that. I'm like, that's deep. I don't want to go there. I mean, it's unnatural for me. But true love is pure. And most masculines, they felt the purity maybe for the first time in their life, but they thought it's just something I experienced once and that's it. Because I was younger and I was more foolish and naive. No, but when we were younger, as I once explained to you before, we were more open. But we were not as evolved and matured yet. So we were like, eh. We had to develop from those immature babies to gradually becoming spiritual adults who can conjure up and step into these powerful illumined unions. So I will do extended reading on Patreon. I'll explain more how these dynamics between both are working, but there's still a lot of healing right now. At the same time, I felt like I was asking for July, what would be the main theme. I'll go more deeper again on this in Patreon, but it felt very steamy, like things, we had a volcano in the coffee cup too, like things bursting out. It was like so much emotion, so much, it's almost like becoming volatile, and we don't want that because it's almost like then it's too overwhelming again. Like eventually you'll have to open a lid and embracing these feelings, because when they overwhelm you, they will again feel like a burden. Even something that's beautiful will feel like a burden if you don't face it a little every day. Because if you're just thinking about it, the thoughts are encircling and they're repetitive because you're just thinking about it and you're not demonstrating that into action. You're not moving. The principle that is life is movement. It's a spiral of life is always in the movement. You're not conjuring it up and moving it. So move your energy, get up of the seat. I'm going up the chair. I'm going to do my lawn now. I'm going to pull weeds out. I'm going to have hell of a fun with it. I love pulling weeds out. It's a funny expression, like pulling something out. I don't know. It feels almost orgasmic to me at times. Like the way something comes out. It's like, ooh, I cleansed something. It must be a Virgo thing because I'm a Virgo sun. But the way I love, like for me, it's I'm a Leo. I'm a definite Leo because I've Leo is my Venus and Mars. And I once read the description that for Leo people, who the way they love is through respect and devotion. For them, it's kind of like a regal, almost sense, like royal love, which is, you respect me first, and then everything I'll give to you. That's me. All you gotta do is show me humility and respect, and I'll give you my whole world. It's just how I am, but we are different, and we're different levels of how we came here and to choose here to express our love, our affection, our devotion, and nonetheless, our physical exchange with one another. So if that video moved you, please hop on over to the other side where there's more on Patreon. And finally, I'm getting a movement on there as well. Yeah, see, I'm smiling because I missed my work. I'm just still choosing not to work this summer. When it comes to the written material, there's 3 levels, but the written material I can do now. I still have too many things. But I like to do videos. Videos are more in the flow for me, so I will do videos and I'll put them on in due time. So if you're there and if you want to get there, get your ass up on over there. I'll see you on the other side. If you're a feminine who's moving into your Christ, embracing your Christhood, your power as the sacred rose, the sacred feminine principle of life and life-giving, I congratulate you. I thank you for being here. And if you're a masculine, I encourage you, feel the love of your feminine and do the work, but also don't stay aloof, don't avoid, confront yourself. Be a man. That's who you were born to be. Not in that, be a man, that kind of way, which is judgmental, but like, you have so much love for yourself that when you choose to be in your power, you love who you are. We were born to be beautiful women and beautiful men because we chose to experience ourselves as divine beauty. That's a part of being divine grace. But if we're not doing anything about it, we will get more and more appalled, or even sometimes disgusted by ourselves, When I was in these low densities, I was almost like, yuck, I don't like myself. But it was so much a part of this transgression, and what it did to me, pulled me down into this despair, dense frequency that I never ever experienced before. I was a light being that came in this gross matter, and I fell like an angel who was forced to fall to heal the fallen energies. It was such a huge sacrifice, but I rose. Remember again? Still I rise. Always I rise. I'm so feisty today. Damn, I really need to do my weeds before I get out of my energy. I'm in the zone, right now. So, can't talk anymore. I'm in the zone. I'll see you on Patreon, those of you who come. Thank you so much. And again, remember, the love of the Divine Mother is the message in each of our beautiful, precious, sacred rose feminine for our masculine that says, thank you. I love you. Please forgive me for anything, and I forgive you as well. I'm sorry for everything you had to experience, everything you had to see, witness in this world that was fallen. But remember again, so did I. We were both meant to experience this separately, but now coming together and share our views of life, our experiences of life, and create a new life together. And remember again, you can always come back to my love as I always come back to your love, because together in this love we're one. And I truly feel you. I know it was difficult. I know it is still hard. But remember again, I'm here always for you. And one other thing that I've received today is that there's another component to the masculine in his opening up, is that he will need to start also asking for help and assistance, opening up to help and assistance, because before it was brushing it off, I'm the boss. I don't need that. Yes, again, we need each other, because in our togetherness we're God, in our separateness we're basically nothing. We're just walking along aimlessly, beheaded chickens, truly. I always have that image in my mind when I think of us in separation. We're headless chickens, truly. But who we really are is divine beings, lightning rods. When you see an image of a light being, an oracle card, a movie, anywhere, that's what we're becoming, because we already are. At a profound level, we already are there, and we're becoming it now through the matter and experience of union in matter. We're going to open up this realm to something beautiful that never was before. So, open up to love. This is a time. Before it was a lot of that, say no, say no, say no. I always get a no. Now it's open up to saying yes, but also receive a yes. And open up to being surprised by life and the beloved. Thank you for watching. I'll see you on Patreon with an extended message. And remember the message, stay hopeless romantic. Thank you. As always, so much love is in power. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.